I'm Sandy Barker, romance author, and you'll find my books on the ABL Romance page. My stories are all romantic comedies set in beautiful locations exploring the theme of self-discovery. And I'll be joining the Romancing Australia podcast panel to discuss all things happily ever after in romance stories.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A huge, warm and autumn welcome to everybody, and a huge thank you for joining us for the Australian Book Lovers podcast, episode number 6. Our mission is to bring, as always, fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature that spans a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their very next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, science fiction and horror author, reader, and one of your hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy and picture book writer, reader, and your other co-founder and host for another fabulous Australian Book Lovers podcast.
And as I mentioned earlier, number 6 today, Veronica. So we're almost into double figures. We're over halfway.
We are, and we have got some fabulous feedback from one of our fans. I'll say one of our fans because we are getting quite a few people, downloading and enjoying and letting us know on social media that they love the episodes. But I thought it would be really nice to actually just share this one, which is on iTunes from Garden Wren, and this is on the 15th of March 2021.
Excellent. That sounds awesome. I'm definitely keen to hear.
Okay. Finding this podcast among the multitude on offer was an absolute gift, encompassing interviews, reviews and insights into the world of authorship, whilst showcasing the work of Australian writers. The Australian Book Lovers podcasts are alerting me to intriguing stories I would have otherwise missed. Great listening. More episodes, please. Hooray!
I'm very happy with that.
You have to be happy with that. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, especially for someone to actually take the time to write a little bit of review.
Yes.
So, any listeners out there, if you do have a little bit of time and any feedback, of course, we're not here to tell you what to write, but if you've got the time to do a review, fantastic. And if you are enjoying what we've done so far and are looking forward to maintain your audio relationship with us as we move forward, learn more and hope develop bigger and better podcasts, that would be great too if you've got some good feedback or even some pleasant things to say. But that was wonderful, Veronica. Thanks for pulling that up.
No worries.
Excellent. So today we've got a whole bunch of entertainment, I guess, and features and content. So we've got a fantastic interview with author Thomas Heffernan. We've got a bit of a discussion about dystopian / science fiction / the role of redemption in dark literature. And obviously we've got a couple of cameos and maybe even a book review or two. So definitely looking forward to rolling out in this episode on episode number 6. So how about we first of all jump straight into some very important news. Welcome to our new segment. As far as the website goes, we have got a bunch of new titles that are being added all the time to the website. And some of our latest additions to the website include some science fiction novels called The Girl Who Lived Underground, Sharkert, End of Night, and Ouroboros, Book 3 in the Antipodes series by author T.S. Simons. We also have new romance listings, including novels 8 Letters, Lost in Love, and Healing Jared by best-selling author Susan Horsnell, as well as a contemporary horror called House of Dreams and a contemporary Aussie tale titled Mayday Mine. And finally, we've actually received a listing for a very unique book called Cockatoo. Now, you'll be interested to know that that is actually a gloriously illustrated volume inspired by wild Australian cockatoos' behaviours in urban environments. So definitely have a look at that. I had a bit of a peek prior to setting up this recording, and definitely looks very cool. A humble little cockatoo might be full of a few surprises too. Now, as far as the actual website content goes and some of the great features, we're very close to unrolling our new short story feature on the website. And that's going to allow authors to upload their short stories of any genre for readers to enjoy. Not only that, the feature is going to include author links, or the ability for readers out there so that if they do stumble across a short story that absolutely captures their imagination, ignites their imagination, or even captures their heart, and they want to discover more, then obviously that they have the ability to click a link and dive straight into further literary works by the author. So really excited about that, and we're hoping we can actually incorporate the ability to put short reviews too. But it's going to be fantastic, because I think it's going to be fun to be able to jump on the website and scroll through the constantly changing and uploading short stories, so that if you're on the train or wherever you might be, simple touch of the button and you can quickly read a short story of your choosing. And a bit like Netflix, only for our vivacious readers out there. And I'm really looking forward to it, because I'm having chatted to so many authors for these podcasts, and having some spectacular interviews. All of them have really inspired me to move back to sharpening my pen a little, or hitting the keys a little bit harder and pumping out a few short stories, because it's something I haven't done for quite a while, and I'm really excited about doing it. So yeah, definitely I'll be taking a part of it, and I hope a lot of authors out there do. But not only that, our next episode following this podcast, episode number 6, we've got a very special, or episode 1, or first special edition podcast, which is going to be a panel episodes, and as well incorporating also contests. So Veronica, I'm sure you can tell our readers and listeners out there more about this very exciting little event coming up.
So thanks for that segue, Darren. A couple of things that I wanted to mention before I jump into the exciting news that we've got. I just want to mention that one of the local news that you and I would be very excited about is that Andrew Roff, who is a South Australian writer and one of our co-authors for Christmas Australis, has actually been picked up by Wakefield Press, and they've acquired the world rights to his debut short story collection. So getting short awesome. Stories started. We've already got one of Andrew's stories in the Christmas Australis anthology, which you'll find under Aussie Tales. But yeah, so short stories, will be, it still brings you the possibility not only of getting published in anthologies and magazines and those kind of things, but you can also get, a book happening. So that's fantastic. Hopefully, when Andrew gets a little bit further along, we can get him back on as a fellow South Australian.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point regarding your short stories. It's not just for anthologies or contests. Yes. Collection of short stories is a product in itself, and it is a beautiful display of your literary craft.
Absolutely. So, Andrew is not a newbie to this. He's had stories published in Mean Gin, Griffith Review, Overland, Island, Going Down Swinging, and more. He was shortlisted for the Adelaide Festival's Unpublished Manuscript Award in 2016, and in 2020 he won the Peter Carey Short Story Award. So he's certainly got some skills under his hood for sure. Excellent.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, which is very good. All right. A couple of other things while I'm on, books and publishing and the Australian industry as well. The Australian Publishers Association has launched a series of rights networking events to help Australian publishers connect with international publishers. So they've done, the first event was kind of in the late January, and they worked with Livres Canada Books, and they had 14 Australian and 12 Canadian publishers participating in 72 meetings. So all of it means that connection, that strengthening of the Australian book publishing industry is going on all the time. So this is fantastic. They're going to keep doing some of those. And the other one I wanted to mention, actually two more to mention, the Small Press Network has announced dates for the 2021 Independent Publishing Conference, and that's going to run from the 25th to the 27th of November. So it's going to take place in person at the Wheeler Centre in Melbourne, and it's going to be streamed live online as well. So independent publishers, get yourselves happening there. Small Press Network, if you don't know about it and you are a small press, get yourselves connected there. And the final one that I wanted to mention is the biennial Feminist Writers Festival has announced its closure due to lack of funding. So I wanted to say, please go to festivals if you can, if they're near you. We now have lots of online opportunities for people to attend. And if you do go to any festivals, please send us an email, and we'd love to do a quick chat with you and maybe record a few minutes of your experiences at the festival, what you loved, what you found helpful, who you met, if you met somebody famous, if you got any books or autographs, or if you got opportunities as a writer. We'd really love to hear all about it. So there you go. Keep your eye on the events and let us know.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, isn't it? Because obviously, with the information you mentioned about connecting Australian authors with international publishers, and also the publishing conference coming in November here in Melbourne, it shows that there is movement forward. There is a lot happening in the Australian literary world and publishing world and the writing world. But at the same time, COVID has had an impact on a few things, and when it does come to book festivals or book launches, etc., if there's the opportunity to actually be there in person, I know there's so much that can be done online now, definitely, and perhaps even just being a part of it online can be a really big show of support too, and that's in any show of support, I guess, that we can offer is going to really help ignite and the Australian publishing and writing community, and it's obviously moving forward full steam ahead. But the more support we can offer, the bigger and better it's going to be.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think we're going to come back. Hopefully, everybody's going to come bouncing out of this last year of ups and downs, and there's no better time than to really basically wipe the slate clean as far as it feels like starting again for so many businesses and so many aspects of day-to-day life, and it's time to come out swinging and make things bigger and better than ever.
Yes, and read more Aussie books. We can just say that, can't we?
Absolutely. Read more Aussie books. Definitely.
And if you would like to read more Aussie books and you are a romance reader, then we have a really exciting prize for you. So as listeners will know, Darren and I are not romance writers, although we've got our, Beneath the Burning Heart has quite a strong romance thread through it, even though it's, more focused on the action and adventure. But what we thought was that why not access some of the experts that we have in Australian book lovers? So we approached a couple of our international bestsellers. We've got Sandy Barker. Sandy is the author of the holiday romance or travel romance series, One Summer in Santorini, A Sunset in Sydney, and That Night in Paris. She's also got The Christmas Swap, and I think she's currently working on books 5 and 6. And she's with one of the Harper Collins imprints. And we have Susan Horsnell. Susan's a Queensland author who writes romance and has many books. We've got 9 of them on our directory under the romance tab, but she also writes westerns. She writes, I think she's got a YA thing happening as well. So we'll have to find out more about Susan when she jumps on. And to add to that, we have someone who is keen to be a little bit more involved in the romance sector, and as an established writer of her own. This is Clare Rhoden. So Claire writes historical fiction and also dystopian science fiction. So she's with Odyssey Books, who are a small press in Australia. Together, we are going to ask them a series of questions all about the romance industry, romance writing, characters, inspiration, publishing, marketing, all about their readers, and all sorts of bits and pieces that you and I could think of that we really wanted to know about romance. So we're recording a special episode, and as part of that, Sandy and Sue were being very generous and have offered to give away some of their books. So first prize is 3 signed paperbacks from Sandy Barker, One Summer in Santorini, A Sunset in Sydney, and That Night in Paris. And we have 9 of Susan's romances in e-version, and 9 people will get one of her romances, which is fantastic. So 10 prizes all up, and all you have to do is head over to Australian Book Lovers, and you'll find on the front page a spinning koala that Darren has very cleverly put there. And
but is it love all about a spinning koala? Actually, spinning koalas.
Good for spinning koalas, yes. You need that other person. So press enter, tell us what romance means to you, and you might be in the running for winning one of those 10 prizes. Please enter before midnight on the midnight Australian Eastern Standard Time on the 8th of April, and we will draw the books as we're recording on the 9th, and you will know very soon, because we're going to do this as a very quick spin around and drop this special episode into the series, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. So it will definitely be, I'm really excited because it's going to be the first of what will become a regular special feature, so to speak, which will be a panel. So panel episode podcast, special features.
Yes,
so we're looking forward to, getting panels together for a lot of different genres and discussion
not
points.
Just fantasy and horror.
No, but I'll be pushing
but I can't wait for that one.
Yeah. But look, if you're a romance fan out there, then it's going to be a fantastic podcast. And not obviously the opportunity to read some romance books, but also the opportunity to just learn a lot about the art of writing romance, and what does each of the members of the panel feel that romance means to them? How do they approach romance? Come up with great, vivid characters, plots, and how do they keep romance fresh in a market that is huge and has a massive following? It's a very, very prolific genre.
Yeah, it is.
It
is the biggest selling genre all around the world.
Yes, so definitely looking forward to that. And not only that, if you are a romance lover and jump into the competition, what better way to spend. If at the moment, obviously, we can't travel overseas, so why not grab a fantastic book all about romance overseas by one of our great Australian romance authors here. So a chance to escape in your imagination and maybe sow the seeds of future travel plans once we can get back on board and jet set across the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a beautiful quote. I've been doing some research on romance,
Uh-huh.
and a beautiful quote by, this doesn't count as one of my quotes, by the way. This is just for the,
I don't know.
for the panel. So romance author Leah Riley once said, "I write romance because 2 things can save the world, love and books. So why not be efficient?" So yeah, I thought that was very
That's
good.
a pretty good quote. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was an article by Tanya Nellestein in the Sydney Morning Herald, February 2020. So yeah.
And it's funny, Veronica, because neither of us would consider ourselves as romance writers, but by Beneath Burning Sky is it's definitely got a romance element to it. So and whether that romance element becomes more prominent or not, obviously, is going to unravel in books 2 and 3. But regardless of which way it goes, it will be really. I'm looking forward to getting a little bit of the inside scoops of the process of writing romance. And so, if we've got any writers out there that are in the throes of already working on romance stories, or may even have a few books under the belt, or someone who wants to begin the process of writing romance and be a part of that, that genre and that marketplace, definitely stay tuned for that very special panel podcast, because I'm sure it's going to be a wealth of information.
And that's exactly where Clare Rhoden is. So, I saw a comment from Claire in one of the groups, writing groups on Facebook, and she mentioned that she was doing a writing romance course. And so I thought, well, perfect, because Claire also reviews a lot of books, and so she knows a lot about writing as well. So I thought, yeah, perfect. Let's see what her take is and what are they teaching about romance fiction now, because of course it's changed, so much over the years. There's some really interesting quotes that I'm going to share with the romance panel. So let's bring it on.
Excellent. Well, thank you for all that news, and we hope you'll enjoy that podcast when we get to it, which will be, so we're recording that on April the 9th, and we hope to have it out by April the 10th, so do stay tuned.
Yes, Darren will have no life between this and then, but that's okay.
No sleep till romance.
That's right.
Hello, I'm Clare Rhoden, and you'll find my book, The Stars in the Night, on the Australian Book Lovers historical fiction page. My story is all about Harry Fletcher, his love for Eleanor, and how he manages to go on after losing his brother on the battlefield. And I'll be joining the Romancing Australia podcast panel to discuss all things happily ever after in romance stories. See you then.
So, Darren, I'm looking forward to your interview with Thomas Heffernan. I believe that he's got 2 books. What are his books? We've got The Interior People and...
Fable.
Fable.
Yes.
Fable, yeah. And although not dystopian, you mentioned that they had, some darkness and some interesting, difficult concepts to consider. But you and I got talking about dystopia and redemption and hope punk and a whole lot of things. So that's the next topic of conversation.
Absolutely. And, by no stretch of the imagination, dystopian fiction, science fiction, or even post-apocalyptic fiction is, a very favourite of mine. And I'm still in the throes of almost finished the sequel to the Hallucigenia project. So the sequel is called Godless. And obviously that is very much a dystopian science fiction, but also I'd say more dystopian thriller. But after my discussion with Thomas, who was a fantastic interview, who raised so many quite frankly profound insights into his writing, which I was really pleasantly surprised to be able to discuss and hear about. But yeah, you're right. The dystopian elements I thought would be a fun little quick chat, because for a lot of people, I can't speak for everybody, but in general, dystopian is quite dark, and there's nothing pretty about a dystopian landscape. If you look up some basic definitions, I've got here that dystopian is relating to or denoting an imagined state or society where there is great suffering or injustice. And dystopias are often characterized by dehumanization, tyrannical governments, environmental disaster, or other characteristics associated with a cataclysmic decline in society. That's a bit of a mouthful for me this hour of the morning.
Yes.
But I guess maybe those readers out there that haven't dipped their toes in dystopian fiction of any sort of subgenre, whether it be science fiction, thriller, post-apocalyptic, I just wonder how many might be aware that, for a lot of dystopian stories, and my own included, so often I believe it serves 2 purposes. One, it lets our imaginations explore, these dystopian stories and allow some sort of preparation, I guess, within ourselves for anything that might be unexpected to come in life. And also, I believe it helps to strengthen our ability to deal with situations, that sometimes might unravel beyond our control. But not only that, I think for myself, dystopian settings, they're fertile grounds for a number of themes. And ironically, there's actually a balance there that I think many people that don't dip their toes, as I mentioned, would realise are there. So yes, I believe that they can, raise the issues of existentialism and nihilism, and that sense of hopelessness, or the end is, inevitable and comes regardless of, one's intentions or beliefs. But I also believe it can sow the seeds of hope and redemption. And especially usually, as a species, in the search for our place on this planet and in the universe. So, I can't speak for everybody who writes dystopian fiction and all their subgenres, but I personally I like to think that, by going into these really sometimes difficult landscapes and difficult themes and emotions is really the searching for those diamond, those kernels, those baseline abilities to reach beyond what is or could be nihilistic or completely without purpose, to strive for purpose, strive for redemption as a whole, and look for a reason to keep moving forward. That's something I love about it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, Veronica.
It's interesting. I'm reading The Shining War by Melissa Ferguson at the moment, one of our
absolutely
authors.
One you can find in our science fiction.
Yeah, and this is a dystopian, and it is, a struggle for survival in the slums beyond the walls of a futuristic city. I just checked what the tagline was, and it is absolutely a challenge to your ethical mores. It's looking at the dark side of humanity and all those kind of things. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, so I'm hoping it comes back with something more positive, because it's interesting segue. It was Clare Rhoden, I think, who first tagged me with the word hope punk, and I looked up hope punk, and it was originally Alexandra Rowland is the woman who originally coined the term. She wanted something that to combat the kind of grim dark stuff, which is the really horrible, deep, dastardly violent, all those things that you've just been talking about, but with an even more so. And so she coined the term, the opposite. She said the opposite to grimdark is hope punk. So she said it started out as kind of a joke. It kind of popped into her head. She put it online, and that's all she said was the opposite of grimdark is hope punk. Pass it on. And for me, the kind of groundswell that came from that, it was very much what I love about being an optimist. I can't help myself that I'm always a glass half full kind of person. But people started responding to her Tumblr post and saying, well, I think I know what this is, but tell us a bit more about it, and so as opposed to grimdark, where everybody assumes that when it comes to human nature, the glass is half empty, in hope punk, everyone has a core of, goodness, and they have, their moral qualms stop them from, killing even the villains, those kind of things. So there's a capacity to do good and to take care of each other and to make the world a better place. And it kind of weaponizes optimism. So it's interesting that, I guess we also talked about the romance, and, that always needs to end with a happily ever after or a happy for now. For me, a story that doesn't have at least some hope, it doesn't have to be a happily ever after, but there has to be a sense of hope at the end of it. I think that is really important for me. I do love, as listeners will know, that sense of the social side of stories. I love the relationships. I love to see people coming through the arcs. And I know if we just wrote about happy things, that they probably wouldn't sell very much, because people like to see their own struggle in stories, I think, which is very much a part of why people write. And there's a quote, say it to you now.
Oh, sliding one in early.
It's sliding one in early. So this is from Mary Flannery O'Connor. And she wrote, I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I say.
Yeah, that is a really good quote. And in fact, that's an epic quote, because, sometimes there is a little bit of a shock or, a little bit of mystery when you go back to some of your writing and realise, something that's come out through your words that may or may not been, well, it's always intentional on some level. It just may not have been intentional on that, super in the moment conscious level, but it's obviously something that, may come through on a subconscious level. But yeah, that's a really good quote. And it's a way of working out things, isn't it, writing? So
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, having come to creative writing from professional writing and project work and government work and work in hospitals and those kind of things, where the facts either present themselves or you have to put the facts together, or writing clinical work or writing up findings. There's not so much creativity. There's not so much a sense of how I feel about things. Whereas writing my first book was all about how I felt about things. So in the catharsis of writing my memoir, I worked out what I was thinking, because some of those deep emotional states are hard to manage. For me, I find them hard to manage. I tend to process internally rather than externally. And I find that those, I could examine them by pouring them on paper. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that is one of the reasons why I do enjoy dystopian tales, or at least exploring those things in my imagination as well. Because as you'll come to hear with the interview with Thomas, we do go into some, not dark, but I'd say heavy themes. But one core theme of, I think, both of his, novels, and what he talks about is redemption. And so I think, for, like you said, we want hope, we want a happy ending. And I think dystopian fiction, all those real dark themes, sometimes they can be, I guess, for example, this is what happens when bad things are allowed to take precedence. For example, a breakdown of society or tyrannical governments. This is what happens when evil is allowed to thrive. So we can explore that and then try and identify, what went wrong. How did the evil get to that point, or how did things get out of control? And as I guess dystopian is usually a wide lens, so it's usually as a race or a city or a fight for survival for a people. Whether it be a small band of people, but it's how do they combat what has gone so very wrong. And so it's an expression of being forced in one sense to explore what would happen if you do just let governments go out of control. What would happen if we do lose our humanity and we do just choose to war for ridiculous reasons, those sorts of things. So we get a way of exploring those things, as unpleasant as they may be, but it also gives us that ability to through these characters to find reasons to triumph over those mistakes that have been made, or triumph over the neglect of questioning humanity, or triumph over evil. And I think with Thomas's work, I suspect it's a little bit more personal, and so it does represent, if we went from a wide lens to small lens, so to speak, then it does dystopian does cover to a certain degree themes that sometimes we all have to approach from our own perspective on our own personal lives. What happens if we do let ourselves follow wrong paths? We can cause rather than a utopian state of mind, we may create a dystopian state of mind, and that will have an impact and may perhaps inadvertently create a dystopian element to our lifestyles. And so I think it's a unique and very imaginative, obviously, and dark, but I think it's a unique opportunity in all subgenres to explore those themes. Hope punk, I love that word, by the way, because by its nature, a punk is going to buck the system. Well, if the system is, by default evil or inherently bad, then of course being a punk to overthrow and bring hope, that's amazing. That's definitely what I want to be. Should we ever find ourselves in a dystopian situation? I wouldn't say we live in dystopia yet.
No, although let's pandemic aside, it's interesting to me also that the opposite of dystopia is, according to dictionaries, etc., is, utopia, where, everything is fabulous. But I guess the problem with that a little bit is that utopia always seems to be, based on the exploitation of, people beneath us or marginalised groups, or, people have less economic privilege, those kind of things. So there is also, there's always going to be, in book terms, I guess, evil in the world, or, darkness, those kind of things. There's another subgenre called Noble Bright, and that's Lord of the Rings. So that's Frodo and Sam, who, they vanquish the Dark Lord by destroying their ring, and the whole world comes good again. But, and this is where I think my pragmatism comes back a little bit, is that there is no such thing as winning forever. You can't vanquish the evil. You can only, reading one of the articles that Alexandra Rowland was writing in, is that you can only beat it back for a few days. But what she says is that the work is never finished. The work will never be finished. It's the fighting and the deciding to take action, no matter the odds, as you kind of mentioned, being able to change your life. That's what is hope punk, and it feels more realistic to me. And I think I see that, and I read it in a lot of more recent literature of all genres, that no matter how dark the night, come the dawn, there is a dawn, even if the next day is as bad. But the sun rises and sets, and away we go and do it all again. So, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that circles back to, the idea, or at least, the possible idea that, these sorts of styles of writing or style of fiction can look for either redemption or meaning in things like nihilism or, severe existentialism, because you're right, we may have to plough forward knowing that the battle begins again at dawn, or begins at midnight, depending on whether you're fighting demons or humans.
That's right. And redemption, of course, is the act of correcting a past wrong. So if you stuffed it up the first time, jump onto the redemption bandwagon, get yourself out there and give it another shot. Yeah.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I think that's a perfect opportunity to introduce our very special guest, Thomas Heffernan. And I think we are all going to be very happy, but very interested in what he has to say. Yeah, very thoughtful. No, it was a fantastic interview, and I'm very honoured to present it to you all to all our listeners now. Here we go. Hello, Thomas Heffernan. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Australian Book Lovers podcast. How are you?
Hi, Darren. Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
No, it's absolutely our pleasure. And thank you so much for your book submission. So we've got 2 of your books on our website at the moment, and those titles are Fable and The Interior People. So I'm going to jump straight in because being a little bit of a horror and mystery fan myself, very intrigued with both the titles and both of the descriptions. So for our listeners out there, I'm just going to read a quick little introduction for Fable and The Interior People, and then I've got a couple of questions. So Fable you've described as a terrifying, visceral journey into the dark reaches of the soul, and is a story of love, sacrifice, and the brutal beauty of mortality. Now, The Interior People has an interesting premise, which is Magnus, a hired killer desperate to atone for the things he has done, is visited by the ghost of his first hit, a mystery man named Bird. I'm assuming I pronounced Bird correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, excellent. That was going to be a risk. Now, from what I can read there's definitely some dark and haunting themes that are part of that book description. So I guess my first question is, can you possibly trace back to where you might have begun to pursue those deeper and perhaps darker themes when it comes to writing, or even just your approach to thinking about life in general?
Yeah, well, I guess with The Interior People, that was inspired in part by the loss of 2 people I was very close to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while it is all sort of, it is wrapped up in that fantasy, supernatural thriller / modern mythology kind of package, that is a story at its core about loss. It's about the experience of loss, the acceptance of loss. So each of the main characters in that book, even the villain of the piece, has experienced a loss, and they're all dealing with it in their own way. As they sort of begin the book, they're often, they're dealing with that in extremely unhealthy ways for the most part. And as the story progresses, the way they deal with that is changing and adapting. And I think that reflects the way that we here in the real world deal with our own loss. That said, I mean, it's not, I don't want people to think it's an autobiographical story by any sense. It's not. It's a work of fiction. But what I do love about writing fiction, and especially about exploring some of those darker themes, is that you can embed your own experiences, sometimes even very painful experiences, into what is essentially a work of pure fantasy. I think it takes a certain kind of talent to be able to do that without making it just an autobiographical or a memoir or that kind of thing, which is a perfectly valid way to sort of pursue that. But the way I sort of want to pursue that is in a more subtle way, and in a way that gets people thinking, and in a way, we've all experienced loss out there, and in a way, if someone can read my stories about it, it might in a certain way maybe influence how they deal with it themselves, or help them, or that kind of thing. And that's what I really love about fiction, because it can stay with you in a way that is very deep and very personal, and help you through those experiences. And that's what I found as a reader. Reading certain books, I would find would stay with me and help me through those darker times. And both Fable and The Interior People are essentially based on very painful experiences that I had in my past. But at the same time, I wanted to. They're not dark. You're not going to come away from these books feeling depressed, which is also something that I wanted to avoid.
Okay, that's a good tip for the readers out there.
Well, because they are, they are quite dark themes, and you might get the impression that they would be a depressing read. But at the same time, I come from a perspective of hope, that ultimately, the cliche of the light at the end of the tunnel, that, you know, everything happens for a reason. These things are put upon us for a reason, these challenges in our lives. And it's, you know, we do often deal with things in an unhealthy way.
I agree.
But ultimately we come out of things better people, I hope. And that's really at the core of both stories, is that as dark as things do get in my stories and in life, you do emerge at the end a more powerful person, a more hopeful person. So there is they do go to dark places, but there is a lot of light in my stories as well.
So there is that balance, and that's a beautifully honest answer. And I guess maybe I didn't do it quite justice by sort of emphasizing a darker theme, but I guess when I think of dark themes, I think similar along the lines of what you've just been talking about, Ben, in the sense of that they are essentially an aspect of the human condition, and they can either bring us to a point of being a better person for having experienced those dark times, or I guess there's the potential to destroy us as well. And it does sound to me as though that's somewhat of a theme in those books, in the sense of, like you said, going through some loss, and the characters and each of them dealing in their own way. And you did say that it was due to, or at least inspired to, for want of a better word, due to your own loss. So I guess one of the questions I have for you following that is, writing these books, do you find you learn new things by expressing, even if it's in the background, your feelings of loss or feelings of those, you know, exploring those challenges that it is to be human? Or did you have a particular intent for the characters as far as what you had already learned that you wanted to portray, or at least have there in the background, that may be reachable by readers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a learning experience in anything, you're right, and that was true of both of these books. I set out with with the Interior People. I wrote the first chapter of that in a flurry late one night, and didn't really know where it was going from there, or really didn't really have any structure in mind, and it kind of shaped itself from that. And I think that it's probably important for me anyway, as a writer, to not go in with a set, to be too sort of structured in what I want to achieve, and to be open to the characters that I've created. I say created, but I feel in a lot of ways they create themselves. I feel like I'm going to be steering them to, they're going to rebel against that to a certain extent if I try and force them down a certain path. A great example was when I was writing Fable, and I was really stuck towards the end, and I didn't know if I was going to even finish the book. Because I'd gotten to a point, I'd felt like I'd written myself into a bit of a corner. I wasn't sure whether it was really what I wanted to say, and I was erring on the side of, maybe I will abandon this. It might not be the best time for me to sort of finish this. And I had an experience where very late at night, very tired, very, very, very half awake, couldn't sleep, trying to toss over in my head what I was going to do with the ending. And one of the main characters in that book almost came to me in a vision. I don't want to be too sort of out there and say, but she almost came to me as I was falling asleep, and just said, don't worry about this. I've got this. Don't worry about this. I've got you back. Don't worry about it. And I sort of went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and then over the next few weeks, I bashed out the last few chapters of that book, and she really came through and really steered the ending herself.
That is pretty epic.
So that's just why I think from that point on, I was just like, I'm going to let my characters be themselves. I'm going to let them drive the story as much as they need to, and I'm going to be open to anything they have in mind. I'm still in control at the end of the day. But,
well, you're at least responsible for any spelling errors.
That's right. But yeah, no. So I think it's important just to be open to a story taking you where it wants to take you, rather than you taking it where you want it to go.
I couldn't agree more, and I definitely subscribe to your way of thinking in the sense that the characters, I mean, it is somewhat of a cliche, but characters really do come alive, and it's to the point where I feel like rather than creating the characters, I'm meeting them, and then exactly that they often not so much dictate the story, but guide the whole process in the sense of whatever ideas I might have when I'm writing, they're often derailed by the characters themselves, and you know, as their essence becomes stronger and their will, I guess, for want of a better word, their will starts taking over, and they start to drive the train and lead the way through the plot. So, but I'm curious about in one of your descriptions for Fable. Try not to stay too dark, but I don't think it's a dark statement. But the brutal beauty of mortality, it's a very profound statement. I was just wondering if I could trouble you for your thoughts as to what was your interpretation of those 4 words.
Yeah, well, that I guess comes from a really strong theme in all my work, I guess, which is the duality of nature. It's something I've always been fascinated by, and I guess I'll start with a quick anecdote of where this all sort of came from. And it was when I was very young. I was holidaying with my family at the beach, and there was a big storm that night. And I was very young. I would have been maybe 5 or 6 at this point. And I was fascinated by it, and I stood and I pressed the house had big picture windows, and I pressed my nose up against the glass, and I was just watching this lightning and thunder, and all of a sudden the storm really came in, and there was a flash of lightning and a bang of thunder, and it was powerful enough to actually knock me away from the window. You know,
wow.
It sort of shook the windows, and absolutely terrified me.
No doubt.
And it was at that point that I guess, more because I was so young, more on a subconscious level, it embedded in me the idea that nature, while it is very beautiful, can also be brutal. And it can be and it needs to be respected. It's dangerous. Storms are beautiful. They're wonderful to look at, fascinating to study, but you need to be very careful because they can kill you. You know, they can be brutal. And that's where we live in
houses for a reason, definitely.
That's right. And that's where I guess the idea of the brutal beauty of mortality, which is in Fable, is that death is a brutal thing. It can take us very suddenly. It can take us very painfully. It can be long and drawn out. But it's also beautiful because we're mortals, and the things we accomplish in our lives and the people we influence in our lives, we've only got a finite amount of time to do that. So that's where the brutal beauty of mortality comes into play, and where what that statement sort of means. It's that, you know, our mortality is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also brutal because it can be taken away from us. And so that's where I think that sort of comes from.
Yeah, and when I look at that phrase, I guess, the brutal beauty of mortality, I think it also is somewhat empowering too, because it reminds us that we are mortal and time is short and unpredictable. We can't even assume tomorrow is going to be here for us, and that in a way that not necessarily forces us, but it does remind us to look at the beauty of everything around us, and, you know, absorb these moments and just, you know, enjoy being part of the universe. So I don't think, you know, brutal beauty is very kind and powerful in what it can teach us and what it does ask us to do, and that is to reflect on the amazement that is reality around us.
Well, thank you for that. That's a really nice thing to say. Yeah, no, that's sort of exactly what I was getting at, and in Fable, it's explored by the notion of sacrifice as well, which is also another theme in my books, and it's basically that I wanted to, you know, I've always been fascinated by the thought of sacrifice, in terms of, you know, the way a firefighter or a paramedic or a police officer will put their life at risk to save a total stranger, that sort of thing. So I thought that it would be interesting to explore that, using immortal beings, because there are characters in Fable who are immortal. And along the way in the story of Fable, a mortal character attempts to kind of teach an immortal character what it is to be mortal, what it is to face the prospect of not being around tomorrow, because the immortal characters in the story, they don't really understand that.
No,
they don't really have that. That's not really something that they fully comprehend. So in a way, it's to have the immortal characters in that story choose to put themselves in harm's way to save the mortal characters, with a lot of them in turn paying the ultimate price for that. When, if you think about it, an immortal character wouldn't have to do that. They could just sit back and let things play out and not really have it affect them. So I wanted to also explore that theme of sacrifice, and have people think about what would you do? What would you sacrifice to save a loved one, or to sacrifice the human race itself, or to save the human race itself, I should say.
It sounds like it would have been a very interesting and fun exercise, trying to work out how an immortal would, experience mortality. And I guess it would be just equally as hard as, say, for someone like us being mortal, trying to imagine immortality, which is, you can kind of grasp it, but I don't think we can, because time is a very strange thing. I've always thought it funny, because sometimes I sit there and think, do I want to live forever? Probably not, but I don't want to die now. And then I realised that, in this existence, at least in our human form, we have sleep, which is the beautiful balance between the two. So every night I switch off, and in essence, you go to this eternity, and then you come back, and it's a new day. So whoever invented sleep was on the money. doesn't answer the immortality question, but it definitely makes.
Well, I do have one character in the interior people who muses on what it might be like to be immortal, and says, well, if I was immortal and I had all the time in the world, why bother accomplishing anything? If I've got all the time in the world to do it, why get off my ass and do anything? So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Now, so you mentioned obviously that these are themes that may have even carried through from when you're 5, when you saw that storm or experienced that storm. But you also mentioned that, at least with these two stories, they were somewhat inspired by events that you've gone through on a personal level. But I guess it's a two-part question. When did you actually start writing? And when you did start writing, was it in this vein, I guess, or in this genre, or in this style, or was it something that's changed over the years?
It's definitely something that's changed over the years. I guess I've always known that I was a storyteller in some form, because I had all these stories in my head. So I guess it was, ultimately it was first deciding that being a writer was something that I was, and that happened early on, thankfully, just given that I found that while I was at school, I was more interested in writing than I was when I was supposed to be paying attention when doing other things, like going to class or even hanging out with friends at some point. Sometimes, I would sometimes tuck myself away in the library and just be writing. So when I first started writing, I of course read a lot, as you need to do being a writer, and so I started, I guess, emulating authors that I liked and books that I liked, and that was, I started out writing. I was really into fantasy novels at one point. The Raymond Feast and Catherine Carr and other writers like that. And so you find you emulate their style a bit. And so, I mean, I guess the first thing I would call a novel that I wrote would have been when I was maybe 14, 15. And it was it was essentially, it was essentially a very derivative kind of Lord of the Rings spin-off, essentially. It was this epic state. I mean, it was, it was a good story. I still have it. I still sort of go back to it occasionally. But so it was ultimately, and at that point I thought, well, I want to be a fantasy writer.
Uh-huh.
And that changed over the years, I guess, because I started wanting to use fiction as a channel, I guess, for things in my real life. I found that fantasy wasn't the genre for me to do that.
Okay.
I needed to explore that in other ways, so I started experimenting, writing in different genres. I even experimented with writing non-fiction at one point. And so, and I think it's all about, again, I come back to this idea of not closing yourself off and not being too structured, and not just deciding, you know, I'm going to be a fantasy writer, or I'm going to be a horror writer, or I'm going to write nonfiction. You know, it's even maybe not even sticking to one genre. You know, a lot of authors do that. You know, they'll write under a pseudonym and they'll write different genres, or even under their own name, and they'll explore different things. And I think it definitely has changed.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important to write. Well, first and foremost, you know, my feeling is you just be true to the story. The story, however it comes to you and how you develop it, it is what the story is. What the story is. You can put a tag on it at the end of it, but while you're writing it, you're not writing because it's, you know, I can only speak for myself, but I don't sit down and say I'm going to write a horror story. It's you know, it's over time, you know, characters come and stories come, and whatever the story will be. And I think I like to think of writing almost like a music, because there is a rhythm to it. Most definitely.
Yeah.
But in the sense of, you know, myself as a hobby musician, I love plugging in an electric guitar and turning all the dials to 10, as you do. So sorry, neighbours. But also I love sitting down with a nylon string and plucking away some Spanish or some classical. And I think, you know, from a writing perspective, I think why not try and explore different styles and different themes, different, I guess, genres. I think
Absolutely.
It's the love of writing is exploring.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I guess to more of an extent than the Interior People, my first novel Fable has been a little bit difficult to classify as a genre. I've heard it referred to as a science fiction novel. I've also heard it referred to as a fantasy novel. I've heard it referred to as a plain thriller. It's, you know, it's gone. You know, it's had a bit of a spectrum of genres, I guess, and that's because, especially with that book, I let the story evolve as it needed to.
Mm-hmm. And if you had to put a genre title to it, what would you call Fable?
Oh, I'd say, look, it's a supernatural thriller.
No, I think that's a beautiful little description. Yeah, and I think that nails it pretty much.
Yeah, I think with the Interior People, I've the illustrator that I worked with on that book probably said it best when she called it modern mythology. Mythology with a touch of fantasy. That's what she called that. And I had never thought of my writing in those terms before, but I thought, yeah, you know what, that actually is pretty apt to describe the Interior People. So,
and when you were writing the Interior People, or at least, you know, close to finish it, so you obviously got an artist and then images in that. Was that a conscious decision from the start, or was that something that evolved?
No, it wasn't actually planned from the start. It was. I was drawn to the work of an Australian artist named Megan Herring, who my partner Jess actually introduced me to Megan's work, and I had a look at her character designs, and I was blown away by how much they spoke to me about the characters that I was writing. I could see the characters that I could visualize the characters that I was writing in her style perfectly. And so that that collaboration rather came about reasonably late in the piece. I was almost done with the first draft of the book when I approached Megan, who was thankfully available and very keen to do it. And that came about pretty late in the process. And her designs are beautiful, and I just didn't want to really give her much in the way of direction. I didn't want to sit her down and say, look, this is exactly how I need the characters to look. This is how I need them posed, that sort of thing. I just basically let her read the book and then just go away and come up with some initial concept designs, which changed a bit throughout the process, but a couple of them didn't really change at all because she really got the characters and really had this ability as an artist, which I think only really talented artists have, which is to not only be able to draw a character, but to be able to capture the mood of that character as well, which I think Megan is very talented at doing and did beautifully with these characters. I'm blown away. I look into these characters' eyes and I can see the thoughts that I wrote for them in their heads. You know, it was amazing.
Yeah, that is a fantastic opportunity, isn't it, to have an artist read your work, and then, you know, especially a talented artist, and then you can visually see, you know, the results of your story entering, you know, in this instance, her subconscious, and then having her portray those visions that your writing has given. And it's so lucky. And I've been lucky enough, I've got a really great artist here in South Australia that does work for me, and very similar. So from the sequel that I've got coming out, I've just recently had the cover done, and I do the old very quick pen sketch on a scrap piece of paper, take a photo with my phone and send it to him and say, with 1 or 2 notes, and that's it. And it comes back, and it's almost as though he's jumped into your brain.
Yep.
And it's such it's just an amazing experience, and I am jealous. I wish I could draw. I wish I could.
Well, so do I. It's
but
one of those
we're
things.
lucky we write.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? And it really is great collaborating. I wasn't sure because I had never really collaborated on a project before, and it was just wonderful to have that experience of, have somebody else experience your vision at that early stage and to help you ultimately realize that vision at the end. It's just, it's really special. I think it's a really special relationship that you have when you collaborate with somebody on something like this.
Is it something you're going to do again, do you think?
I'd love to, actually. I was, when I was writing Fable, I was exploring that initially as the idea of having that as being a graphic novel rather than a novel. Ultimately, it became a novel, obviously, but I would love to explore the process of writing a graphic novel at some point, and I'd definitely love to collaborate with Megan or somebody else to do that as well. But just fantastic.
Well, 2021, it's the year of the graphic novel for you then, I think. You have to do it.
Well, I won't make any promises. I'll stay open. But yeah, no, that'd be great.
Well, so speaking of the year ahead, have you got something in the works at the moment, or are you slowly preparing for a new book, or are you looking to do a bit of marketing? What sort of plans do you have in relation to your writing?
Well, yeah, this year is going to be pretty focused on pushing the Interior People out.
Mm-hmm.
That was published in November 2020, and so
it's still brand new.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm pretty focused on pushing that out. I've got another project sort of slowly on the back burner at the moment. Always got something on the go, but the inspiration for that comes sporadically. So I'll work on that when I can. So at the moment, it's all about the focus is on the Interior People at the moment. Really trying to overcome some of the challenges of being an independent author in terms of the marketing and promoting your work, and try and get it out there for as many people to read as possible, which is the ultimate aim, I think, of any serious writer. You want your books to go out there into the world and be read and hopefully enjoyed by other people. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's an absolute given. And for other writers out there, authors, or even people thinking about writing their first book, what sort of lessons have you learned, and what approach do you take when it does come to marketing? Do you do a lot of it yourself? Do you employ other people? As an independent author, what sort of maybe tricks or hints and tips that you've discovered along the way?
I'm still learning a lot about it myself, which is good. Word of mouth is something that you need to rely on, but it only gets you so far. I find, getting out there myself and actually talking to bookstore owners myself and introducing myself has been a real step for me to take, because I'm a pretty introverted person. I don't essentially find that sort of interaction comfortable at times.
I wouldn't have picked that.
So it's so that's been something that has been, initially I was pretty skeptical about doing that. But the response has been great.
Excellent.
The support that I've received from several even larger chain bookstores when talking to them has been just fantastic. They've been pretty happy to lend their support to local authors, because I think a lot of them probably understand the challenges, given that they work in that industry. They understand the challenges that you have when you're an independent as opposed to a mainstream author in terms of getting your work out there. And it depends on your budget as well. That's another thing that you really need to take into account when you're an independent author. You often won't have that the resources that you'd like So it's about getting creative, and coming up with things like, I did for one of my books, I did a letterbox drop where I just basically had flyers printed for my book. And I just walked around and put them in letterboxes.
Old school, but I absolutely love it.
And so just I guess the advice or whatever would just be get creative. Don't fall for these things online, these promises that pop up in your Facebook feed that say we'll guarantee to sell 10,000 copies of your book. Don't fall for that stuff.
No.
Just get creative and talk to other independent authors. That's the other thing that I would say has been a great experience for me. It's get out there and interact with other authors, because ultimately that they're on your wavelength. They're in your, they're in the trenches with you, so to speak. They're fighting the same battles that you are, and they're going to have their own approaches and tips and tricks, and they're going to basically clue you into certain strategies and approaches that you might have never thought of. And so it's about getting out there and being getting involved in the independent writing community and wherever you live, and even these days I say wherever you live, but you can pretty much get involved with anyone in the world these days with the internet. So
absolutely,
take advantage of that and just reach out and join as many writers groups on Facebook and in real life as well, at libraries and stuff like that. We'll have writers groups. Get involved, talk to other people, and because ultimately nothing really bad's going to come of that. It's always going to be a positive experience, even if it's not something that helps you sell any books. It's going to be a positive experience to just get out there and hear what other people are going through as well. To not feel, you can feel very alone as an independent author.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I do agree with the sense that there's no mastering the marketing side of things as an independent author. Like you said, it's a constant learning curve. There's always something to learn. There's always thinking outside the box, always chatting with other people, learning some other tips and tricks or different approaches to take. But I think traditional publishing is fantastic as well. But I think one of the main differences is, with a traditional publishing company, there'll be a window of opportunity where they'll market a particular title. But due to their very business nature, they'll reach a point where they'll have to refocus their spotlight, so to say, on the next title. At some point, your book won't receive the same attention as the next new book. But I think with independent authors, they're always working. So we're always trying to push our work, and we don't give up. And I think that's really cool. There's no window of time that is going to close on us, because we can just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like after 6 months, then we have to switch over to a new title and then refocus the whole approach. It's like, no, we can just keep focusing on our own achievements, own goals, and pushing forward. So
that's right.
That does come with its challenges, but it also comes with some fantastic rewards too.
That's right. Yep.
Now, I've read a little bit in your bio, and one of the things that your bio reveals is that you're a speechwriter as well as an author.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, how does one fall into or get into a career as a speechwriter, and how does that affect, how is approaching speechwriting different to, for example, when you sit down to write your fiction?
Yeah, well, they're obviously very different forms of writing. How you get into it? I mean, oh God, I got into it almost by accident. Just when I was working in a workplace, and they needed somebody who could write, and I didn't know what I was writing at that point. I just put my hand up and said, "Well, yes, I can write. Oh, sure, I'll give it a go."
That is,
and it just ended up being that I was writing. I ended up joining a media unit for a politician. So it was writing things like media releases and speeches and that sort of thing. And the biggest difference, I suppose, is that you're writing, when you're writing your own work, you're writing in your voice, obviously. When you're writing a speech, you've got to write in somebody else's voice. So it's about, you've got to learn how they speak and their turns of phrase and what they want to say. Ultimately, when you write something for yourself, when I'm writing my books, it's what I want to say, and it's in my voice, and it's my inspiration. And writing a speech is all about getting into somebody else's head, I suppose, and getting into their mindset and writing in their voice.
Do you think that's helped you when it comes to dialogue for characters?
Oh, it definitely has. Yeah. That's a big thing. It definitely has. Yeah, it's helped me to shape, I suppose, because when you do write speeches, you've got to be very conscious of how people speak. And, you've got to be very conscious of sentence length and that sort of thing, which you don't immediately think about all the time when you're writing dialogue for characters. You can have them run on sentences, sentences run away and just be very long. And so it's helped me in dialogue of just being a speechwriter. You've got to understand how people speak, and people need to take a breath when they are speaking and gather their thoughts. And so I've taken that into my characters. And I suppose The Interior People is a much more dialogue-heavy book than Fable was, and I guess in certain ways, I guess being a speechwriter might have influenced that a little bit. Just given that I think I was better at writing dialogue. Not that I think that there's anything wrong with the dialogue in Fable, but I was a little bit better, more skilled at writing dialogue when it came to The Interior People. So I think I just did it a little bit more in that book.
And it's definitely make or break, for characters from a reader's perspective, at least from when I'm reading a book. And it's something I'm always trying to increase my knowledge and ability when it comes to, having a unique voice for each character. And like you said, being conscious of sentence structure, of the rhythm each character might have, the little quirks, but it's definitely an art form. And I could imagine that being a speechwriter would definitely give you an edge to that.
Yeah, it's been a big help, and it's fun. Right, writing speeches is fun. It's a very different form of writing. It's how how a novel differs from writing a screenplay. Something else that's very dialogue focused. It's you've got to. You don't have, when you're giving a speech, there's no subtext, for the reader to get into. You've got to be very succinct in speech writing, and so I think that's also helped in my fiction writing to give a little bit of that iceberg principle of the 20% on the page and the 80% that's subtext, that's below, that's between the lines. I think it's helped a lot there too in just being able to get across, because what I try and do with my books, I write very fast-paced books. My books are both very, very, very fast-paced, and so I think it's about getting across just enough of what I need to say in the words that are on the page, and hopefully if I've got the tip of the iceberg right, if I've done my work as an author right in that tip of the iceberg, the rest of the iceberg, the subtext, the between the lines, is going to be there for the reader, and they're going to be able to feel that in themselves.
It can be very tricky, can't it, when you're writing, because being the author of the words, there's no real way of gauging how those sentences will affect a reader, in the sense of there's no way of reading the sentence without knowing it already. That's right. So it is a tricky thing. And I do like that analogy of the iceberg principle, absolutely. So when it comes to, you said you write pretty fast-paced, or fast-paced prose. What about when it comes to the editing side of things? Do you find that, by consciously having a fast-paced setting prose, does that make editing a little bit easier, because it's easier to just know what you've got to take out? So for example, any excess fat's easy to just slice off, or does it have an impact on the editing?
I think it does to a certain extent. Editing is always going to be difficult. But I
think, word spoken.
Especially self-editing. I mean, it's the whole thing of the analogy of you're killing your babies. You don't want to get rid of stuff you love. But I think in editing, is that like writing? I actually write quite fast as well, in terms of just my fingers on the keyboard. So writing, I tend to go quite fast, and then editing, I find I can take a little bit slower, because I feel like I've got the words out there now. I can look at it a little bit more objectively. So I think I write fast and edit slow would be putting it simply. Harder or easier, I don't know if it makes it more or less difficult. Either way, I think it's always going to be a challenge. But it's something I approach in a very measured way, and it's something I don't rush the editing. If I've taken something out and I find ultimately it needs to go back in, well, then it'll go back in. There's nothing hard and fast about it. But it is more. I'm more inclined to apply that kind of iceberg notion while I'm editing rather than writing. Writing, I think you need to let your creativity run free. It's when I come to editing, it's when I think about, okay, I've got 2 sentences there. Could I possibly make that 1? Could I get across what I need to say in 1? Is the second sentence redundant? And you apply that to everything. Is the second paragraph redundant? Have I got my message across in the first paragraph? Even if I've got a nice little flourish of prose in the second paragraph that I really love, it's looking at it objectively and trying to think, well, does it need to be there? Does the reader have enough from the first paragraph? Can the second paragraph go?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I am absolutely envious sometimes when I read, and for example, an author has the ability to, in one paragraph, give so much information, maybe even cross 10, 20-year period in one paragraph. And I think,
absolutely.
Damn it. I've read 4 sentences and you've already, and yet I find myself, trying to do that. And obviously it's a skill we've got to work on, but it's definitely an art form. And it's definitely a fantastic approach, that iceberg principle.
It's interesting you should say that, because that is how I feel when I read anything by Cormac McCarthy.
Okay.
I both love and hate Cormac McCarthy because he does that. He can get across in a single sentence what it might take me a whole chapter.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and it's a skill you can see in his writing that he's built as well.
I don't think anyone just starts with that ability. Or good luck to them if they do. It'd be like writing a symphony, just picking up an instrument, just bang, writing a symphony. I'm sure someone's done it, but I don't think it happens often. Now, when it does come to writing, I'm just curious, do you have any good luck charms? Do you have any approaches that you little quirks that you find gives you a bit of luck writing, or is it just you just get down to the art of hitting the keys?
I don't know. I want to say alcohol, but no, no, that's just no. I'm not serious there.
That's all right. I've tried that. Didn't like what I wrote.
You should never write drunk, or you can write drunk, but never let anybody else read what you've written.
Or don't let them know, and you have to keep writing drunk to keep the consistency.
No, I don't think so. I think it's having the notepad ready to go. I think at any time is the good luck charm, I suppose, would just be the pen and the notepad, because you might come up with an idea and think you're going to remember it, and you never do, and then you kick yourself later because you think that was such a great little idea I had, but now it's gone. So I think it's just jotting down. I've got notepads and notepads just full of stuff that I've just jotted down, and it might be a chapter, or it might be just a single line of dialogue, or it might be just even just a reference I've read somewhere in another novel that I'll just jot down, and just sort of having that ready to go, and I think just opening that every once in a while and having a look back through that is the biggest thing for me. I think I just get down to it ultimately. Yeah. It's, as I think I mentioned earlier with the interior people, I woke up late one night and I just jotted down the first chapter of that book. And at that point, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't even know if I would take it any further than that. And that first chapter, incidentally, hasn't really changed much.
Oh, that's fantastic.
In the whole process. So it's just the notebook, I think, is my friend. It's pretty much never. I pretty much never go anywhere without it. I tried for a very limited time to try and capture the same sort of thing just using the notepad on my phone or something, but no, don't do that. You've got to. It's the tactile thing of actually writing it down with a pen and paper.
Yeah, I'm in your camp 100%. I
Yeah.
think once or twice I've tried tapping a note on the notes in the phone, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I've got scribbles and all sorts. But the irony is, like you said, sometimes you get these fantastic ideas, and in Murphy's Law, you'll never remember them.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how you can remember that you had an idea, but you can't remember the idea. But then if I write it down, I remember it without any effort. It's such a strange thing. So if I write something, unless it's like a particular sentence or word thing, but as soon as I write down that idea, then if I wake up the next morning, it's just cemented to my brain. If I don't write it down, I'll never remember it. So it's a catch-22. So yes, I've got plenty of pages there that I probably never look back on, because just the act of writing seems to, well, for me at least, seems to cement it in. But it's definitely a good tool, the old pen and paper. You just can't beat it. It doesn't run out of electricity unless it catches fire, and it's going to be just fine. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And for all our listeners out there, the two books that you're just going to have to check out are Fable and The Interior People. Now, can you perhaps tell our listeners where they can find more information about you, if you've got a Facebook or website, whether you'll be doing any book readings or...
Yeah, certainly. So firstly, thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure.
It's been a fantastic experience. It's been really good to chat with you, and really good. What you're doing is really fantastic for authors like myself. It's really great. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Let's hope we can make it bigger and better this year. Definitely.
Yeah. So my books are available through vividpublishing.com.au.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the publisher. Just vividpublishing.com.au/fable or /The Interior People.
Excellent.
And people can also connect with me on Facebook at Thomas Heffernan Author is my my Facebook author page. I'm not a big social media person, so I'm not really active on Instagram or any of those things yet. That's something I'm sort of exploring, dipping my toes in the water with. I've never been a big tech person, so at the moment I'm just on Facebook and through the website of my publisher. Obviously, people can.
Well, we'll definitely put some links for those two sites you mentioned as part of the notes for the podcast. And now I did have a real quick look at your Facebook, and I noticed, I'm guessing you've got a bit of affection for the writing of Mr. Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And when did you begin to enjoy his, now do I say writing, his ranting, his raving? I'm not sure which one.
Bit of all of the above, really. I think I came to Hunter S. Thompson the way a lot of people do, which is obviously through Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That was one of those books that I just read when I was in high school. But then I discovered that, that people, he's really pegged as the drugged out writer who wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But what I love about Hunter S. Thompson is he was actually one of the most astute political commentators the US has ever seen. And so I dug into, now I don't think I've picked up Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in probably 20 years. I've devoured all of his other stuff. He wrote for Rolling Stone for a long time. He wrote for various other publications and newspapers, and he was actually primarily a sports journalist.
That's the irony, isn't it?
Yeah. So a lot of and it's just brilliant, his observations and just the fact that he could get behind the scenes with these, like with people like Richard Nixon. He could get behind the scenes and just talk football with Richard Nixon. And that's how he wrote a whole article, a whole book about, his experiences on the campaign trail of Richard Nixon. So, yeah, he's just a brilliant and very funny guy. And really, he's pegged as this drugged out lunatic who just liked to drive fast and take drugs and stuff like that. But he was really a very loving, warm guy, and just very funny, and like I said, very astute politically as well. So just being a speechwriter as I am, with an interest in politics, I just immediately gravitated towards his style of writing, because he takes a lot of the bullshit, if you pardon my language, that's involved in politics, manages to carve through that and tell the truth and just be very honest. And that's something you don't see a lot in political writing, even the best political journalists. So that's what I love about his writing.
Yeah, he definitely didn't have much of a fear of offending anybody, and,
No,
and
that's right.
not that he was going out of his way to offend anybody, but it was
Yeah.
a case of, talk the truth and be damned if you don't like it. So that's too bad. But I think, when you said a lot of people just think he's one of these drugged out writers, but I agree. I don't think that's a fair assumption. And to me, it's like, Christopher Hitchens, I think Christopher Hitchens and Hunter Thompson, although vastly different in their approaches, but they're both similar in the sense that they're so well read and comfortable in their area. That they just live and breathe it. So, obviously with Hitchens is more the social philosophy and religion, and Thompson with the politics and the sport, but they're both just cut straight to the truth. And you can just tell, like, there's no trying to catch them out, because whatever the subject, there's a good chance they know a lot more about it than you do.
That's right.
And I got nothing but respect for both of those gentlemen and their writings and their ability, their talks. Obviously, you can see a lot of Hunter S. Thompson on YouTube doing a lot of his talks. So
yeah, definitely.
But anyway, no more Mr. Thompson stuff. We're talking about Thomas Heffernan. So thank you once again. And really do appreciate it. And let's see if we're not able to catch up again sometime this year, and we'll find out how the interior people are going.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
And we'd love to hear if you when you're starting to work on a new book, and whether it's going to be maybe even a graphic novel.
Fantastic. Thanks, Darren.
All the very best to you, sir. And
you too.
We will talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Darren. Bye.
Okay, what a fabulous interview. And as you say, it went to some interesting and very deep places. So, as well as books, we looked at grief and ghosts and marketing and speech writing and, listening to the muse, that kind of half sleepy time when, your characters are telling you what to do, and you might think you're the writer, but really you're only the translator. So that was very interesting.
Definitely. And this is going to pop up time and time again, because it is just one of the purely so honest and magical aspects of writing, and that is when your characters come to life. So to anyone out there who hasn't embarked on a writing journey but is planning to, I'm envious, because you've still got that brand, that amazing, startling discovery to make. But then, of course, you've got unlimited relationships to enjoy as you move forward and continue to write forever and ever.
Yes. Ever and ever would be good.
It was fantastic talking to Thomas, and I really do appreciate him taking the time to speak with me, and I hope our listeners out there really enjoyed some of the insights he's given to the inspirations for his work. And of course, by all means, please jump onto our mystery genres and have a look, or follow the show note links to discover what his two novels, Fable and The Interior People, are all about. I think if there's anything about what he's mentioned sounds intriguing, I'm almost certain you're not going to have any regrets grabbing a copy of one of his books and delving into his worlds.
Yeah. And look, how, I guess, courageous and creative of him to share, his vulnerability and some of his life experiences. And I think that the books that connect with us most, or that we most connect with, are the ones that reflect some of our own experiences. So, yeah. Fantastic.
Absolutely, and there's something so pure about honesty, and if you've got the courage and honesty to open up, or at least reveal these very personal and intimate details sometimes, then in writing it's going to come through and really resonate.
Yep, absolutely. So talking about words and resonating, I snuck in one of my quotes. Have you got a quote to share with us that you can just spit out for us?
Well, it's funny because you did sneak an extra one at the start, but the irony is I actually picked 3 quotes for today. So I think karma came through and got me. But yes, I've got a couple of quotes, which I look, they're obviously centered around dark or dystopian themes, but the 3 I've picked is, one is a little bit, not humorous, but a bit of a reflection on how the future can be maybe sometimes predicted. But I'll start with, I guess I'm going to start with one that's going to flip a lot of what I talked about dystopian fiction on its head, because and this is probably more a exercise in discussing free will. But the quote I have to start things off is it better for a man to have chosen evil than to have good opposed upon him? And that's by Anthony Burgess from A Clockwork Orange, which was a fantastic read, which I first discovered when I was in year 12. And now I remember my English teacher, who was amazing, a lady by the name of Mrs. Pridham, took me to the side and gave me a copy from, the sort of tucked away shelves, because apparently it's been pulled from the curriculum.
Yes, I'm not surprised. I ended up walking out of the movie. I saw it when I was at university, and I thought, I can't sit here and watch this. It was just too violent and horrible, and I left.
Yeah, it's a bit. Well, the movie's definitely confronting. The book's a little bit different. I mean, equally confronting, but it's a unique literary piece. And look, I was probably, I think, 17, turning 18 at the time. I'd read plenty of books, and yet that one, I was glad for someone had penciled in translations for a lot of the made up words that were used in the novel. But yes, is it better for a man to have chosen evil than to have good imposed upon him? It's really, really interesting question.
Where do you fall? Which side of the line?
I'd hazard to have an assumption at this point. I don't think it's good for anybody to choose evil at all. But it's, having good opposed upon him, I guess, is ironically, that to me, when I read that quote, it feels as though having something opposed upon me is tyrannical. So therefore, either to choose evil or to be a victim of evil. Because to force somebody to be good is, in effect, I can't think of, I don't think it's a very good thing to do, because it's taking away freedom. So, yeah, interesting one. That's something probably definitely take a few cups of coffee to ponder that one.
And I think it's got to depend on context.
Absolutely.
It's the kind of thing where, if it's a small evil, is it all right? Or if it's a large evil, is it not? Or is it regardless, and people's definition of evil, what is, for one person evil, the other person is that righteous.
And I think the undertone there is, are there any limitations to what, defending freedom, basically? So to be free, are we ready to accept whatever consequences that comes, including the ability to choose evil? Or if we want to live, would we choose to abolish freedom if it meant abolishing evil? But then under whose control would we be under in that, hypothetical scenario? And we'd have to really hope that person didn't have any evil at all, or that entity. But anyway.
Brave New World, Big Brother stuff, yes, isn't it? It's very appropriate to the dystopian. Okay, so I'm going to give you a slightly different
your
one.
Turn.
So this is one from Marianne Williamson. So joy is what happens to us when we allow ourselves to recognise how good things really are.
Yes, simple, but straight to a very good point.
Yes. It is so easy for humans to be negatively geared to everything that's going wrong, to the pessimistic side. And, it's the old, flight and fright. And, people talk about amygdala hijacks and all those kind of things. Although there is some science suggesting that that's not quite right anymore. But we always tend to veer to the dark side. And if you let yourself recognize how good things really are, and, even practicing gratitude and thinking, what, that cup of coffee that I had this morning was really good. Except I'm a tea drinker. I'm saying coffee. There's lots of people, coffee drinkers out there. I know you said you had your cup of coffee this morning and it got you started. And it's knowing that I'm going to have a chat with you and we're going to talk about things, and considering that the podcast is going out, looking outside and remembering the beautiful white cockatoos on the green tree in the blue sky that I saw this morning, not thinking about the housework or the bills or the editing that I haven't done this afternoon. But it's, if you start to pick up those things, then it brings the balance and it brings the hope punk as opposed to the dystopia. So there's my quote.
Excellent. No, I do love that. I interpret it as, in one respect, just be in the moment, because, the past, yes, absolutely, there's time and place to, traverse those rivers back in time and maybe, joyful memories, sad memories, difficult memories, unresolved issues, all those sorts of things. But they don't have to have real estate of your state of mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Absolutely.
So sometimes, if you're standing there waiting for the kettle to boil or waiting for the coffee machine to do its thing, it's not very difficult to just stop for a second and go, I'm standing, in pure safety, waiting for my delicious coffee to be made, for example. I'm not standing in rubble wondering where my family is or what's left of my family or anything. So, but little things, not even putting it in perspective. I think really just being, like, for example, I always get anxiety reading the news and just go, oh my God, the world is going insane. But then, my little riding buddy, or not little bit overweight riding buddy.
Your little
Bobby,
furry riding buddy gets doing that.
He has a good way of reminding me to do exactly that quote. He refused to stay outside by himself because he wants me to come out and he wants me to go one by one to every single chili plant and have a look and so he'll sniff it and I'll touch the leaf. That simple moment is it forces me to go, hang on. Let's just have a look at these chilies, or let's have a look at plants, sun's shining, the lawn's green, Bobby's purring. It's just a moment in time where there's joy. Yeah. And if there is a hammer coming down and it's coming down slowly and we don't know when it's going to hit, why worry about it? Might as well find as much joy as you can, because if the hammer's going to hit, the hammer's going to hit anyway. At least give, ironically, at least give the hammer some purpose in the sense of when it hits, it gives you a split instance to summarize all those joys that you experienced, rather than sit there shaking, staring at the hammer. So, yes, have joy. I like joy. Yes. All right.
All right. Give us your last one.
I've got two more. Three.
Okay.
But then, this one's a bit of not a fun one, but it is a fun one. It's by author Philip K. Dick, who, very, very unique writer. But he did say something, this quote that is very interesting, very timely today. And that is, there will come a time when it isn't they're spying on me through my phone anymore. Eventually, it will be my phone is spying on me. And no truer words spoken.
Yep.
When I talk to people, I use the example that at one point I was paranoid. Now I don't care anymore. But I would even switch my data off on my mobile unless I needed to do anything on the internet or anything. And we went shopping we went shopping, and for some reason we decided we'll stop and get a new quilt, just for random reason. And we bumped into somebody who was a really good quilt salesman who chatted to us for about half an hour, gave us the insights of all the different quilts, and we finally bought one, came home, turned my phone back on, or it connects to Wi-Fi, of course, as soon as you get near the house. And for the next week or two, there was nothing but quilts and pillows advertising on everything I did. And I went, there you go. So I know nobody's listening out there as far as government departments, because I'd hate to think how many people would lose their mind listening to 30-minute conversation about quilts and 3-hour conversations about the best cat litter. But there's definitely algorithms. But yeah, it's interesting. This is the gentleman who brought us Blade Runner, obviously, or do Electric Android Dream Sheep.
Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. I love
Electric
that
Sheep, yeah. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And my final quote.
I think The Man in the High Castle is his as well. I don't know that I read that, but I think you're pretty sure he wrote that, didn't he? The Man in the High Castle?
I'm not too sure. As far as movie renditions go, I know that what's the Schwarzenegger one where they go to Mars for the holiday? Total Recall.
Oh, Total Recall.
Yeah, and that was about, wholesale holidays or something along those lines. Yeah. But my final quote is something that I hope will give us inspiration and the opportunity for redemption and a little bit of hope punk.
Okay.
No matter what happens moving forward. And this is, we'll go from the most obvious, and that's George Orwell's, and from his book 1984, and that is, there was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. And I like that. So I prefer to be not mad. Yeah. So I hope everyone can stay not mad, and then we can can fight for the truth no matter what.
Yes,
which is pretty tricky in this internet age, because how do you even determine what's truth anymore?
Yes,
but that's for another day. So it's fun. But I think out of all those quotes, I like yours the best regarding taking a moment to enjoy joy.
Yeah, very good.
So I'm going to apply that today and look for those moments, definitely.
Excellent.
And hopefully our listeners out there will hit stop or stop streaming and pop the headphones down at some point, and hopefully they got a moment or two to find something, there's something around that they can find a little bit of joy in.
Yeah, go out and smell the roses, look at the clouds,
or
watch the sky change.
Or download a really cool book by an Australian author and
yes.
ignite your imagination and find joy in the world building of our great Aussie writers.
Yes, and if you want to know where they are, you need to go to www.australianbooklovers.com and browse your way through the genres that you like, or just go from go to woe. Don't forget to jump in, and even if you're not a romance reader, you might know somebody who is a romance reader and you could give them the book. So join our romance competition and keep your ears out for Romancing Australia, our romance writers panel. And you can also find us on Twitter at Australian Books, on Facebook and Instagram at Australian Book Lovers, and you'll see lots of Bobby there giving his book of the day. I think he's getting a very good workout, isn't he, Darren?
Yeah, it's just a little bit. Yeah, he's enjoying it, definitely. Finally, he's pulling his weight a little when it comes to doing the work around here.
Very good. Very good.
But definitely, look, we've obviously touched on some heavy and interesting themes today, but our very next podcast is going to be the very special panel edition, and it's going to be a complete turnaround where we're going to talk about all things romance, as you said, Veronica. So definitely join us there. There's going to be lots of fun, lots of laughter. Maybe talk about our first kiss. Maybe talk about what romance means to you and me. So many cool things. So definitely a about face and something a little bit more sunny, and might I say a little bit more joy.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, people don't usually read romance to dive into the dark side of life. So
yeah, there's no nihilism in romance, although romance may trigger nihilism.
There is romance in almost every genre, as that quote was.
Yes,
love and books
and heartbreak, especially our first heartbreak, can take us to some very soul-searching places.
Yeah.
I think that applies to everyone. I would think, unless of course you've never had your heart broken and you've been in love all this time, in which case, fantastic.
Yes.
But nonetheless, I believe it's time, Veronica, to say goodbye to our awesome listeners and have a good crack at our tagline.
Indeed. All right.
So episode 6, I think this one's going to be at least a 7 out of 10.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
Okay, so how about I'll count in and you start it, and then we'll do it.
Right.
See, it's already starting to sound like muso talk, where you go, how about you do the da-da, and then I'll come in and go dun-dun-dun. Anyway, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
And remember to
read more Aussie books.
Yay.
I think that's pretty
Definitely
good.
A 7.
At least a 7. We'll go with a 7 for today. We need room for improvement because, we don't want to kick a 10 out of the park
we
straight
don't pick
away.
too early, you think yet?
No way. Take care, everybody. We'll see you at the next episode.
Bye for now.
Clare Rhoden's The Stars in the Night brought up many bittersweet memories for me. Spending some time in the mind of the main character Harry and experiencing the roller coaster of a young man at war and a grandfather remembering his past has brought poignant memories of my own grandfather to mind. This is a beautifully crafted story of love and loyalty, friendship, loss and grief. The plot switches effortlessly between the now and the then, capturing the raw brutality of battle and the strange pauses in between. It shares the changes in attitudes to war and social standing, faith and gender. Rhoden has masterfully described decades-long grief, the impact on those closest, and the hole that changes a person forever and never leaves them. This is a wonderful, immersive story and well worth your time to read. I highly recommend it.
Let's meet again, where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.